on being with the Father. Ready. All right. On your mark. Get set. Pray.
Yeah, it's not working. Not working. But do keep trying.
Done! No. I'm done. I'm done too. And I appear to be unsmoted. Yeah. For now,
Unsmoted.
let me tell you, when you die and go to hell, you're going to wish you weren't dead. Interesting. Now, am I going to be doing that after I go to paradise to join my bevy of spotless virgins for all eternity? You know, because I
he said
just want to
bevy.
get my heads up where I'm going for eternity.
Guys, I'm sorry. I'm just starting to think that this religion thing, we're not going to settle it in 3 minutes. So if you could just wrap it up and find some common ground, that would be great. Sorry.
Common ground between Christians and Muslims. We're waiting.
Maybe the
Anything
Jew's right.
at all.
Yeah, maybe so. You know, which is funny because I normally don't care for Jews. We don't either.
Really?
We seem to find them kind of scheming.
We're very big on that, too.
Really?
Yes!
Scheming, yeah.
We're not so different after all.
Oh, Lordy.
I'm Steve Carell.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
Steve Colbert, and this has been Even Steve.
Yeah, even Steven. That was interesting. How about that? Well, that was a lighter way to get into something we're going to get into a little bit heavier. Now, most of the people that tend to listen to my program have a problem with Bill Maher. And I have the same problem with Bill Maher that I have with Richard Dawkins, in that they're assholes. Now, that gives you commercial appeal. I think we figured that out. I mean, that's why so many people are trying to do it now. Well, I can be mean. That'll work. That'll get me up there. I don't listen to assholes. Don't really like them. There is a man that believes essentially what Richard Dawkins believes, who does it far more professionally. Now, he has his slips. People get mad in these debates. Christopher Hitchens. Now, he has passed. I think he had some kind of cancer, I believe. Had a way of being polite while still body slamming you in a debate. Evidence, facts, critical thinking. These things were always his method of assault, and he was sound in it, and he was incredibly well read, and his logic worked well on the fly. These are things I admire. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to listen to a clip next that basically talks about a day of prayer that was ruled unconstitutional. It was something that I think Congress threw together back in 88-ish, and I don't know if it was I'm pretty sure it was a federal judge struck it down as we're not doing this. This is focused on one religion. This cannot be pushed from the government down to the people. And they went on the news. I think they went on Anderson Cooper here, and they talked about this. So we're going to listen to Christopher Hitchens. He discusses, I can't remember the name of the guy, but he leads like the family council or some shit. But he's a Christian. So you have your atheist versus your Christian here, but an interesting discussion nonetheless. So let's get into it.
Tonight in Raw Politics, a federal judge in Wisconsin has ruled the annual National Day of Prayer is unconstitutional. The judge said the observance, which began more than half a century ago, violates the First Amendment, which bans a law respecting an establishment of religion. Judge Barbara Crabb said the National Day of Prayer, quote, goes beyond mere acknowledgement of religion because its sole purpose is to encourage all citizens to engage in prayer, an inherently religious exercise that serves no secular function in this context. Now, the White House still plans to recognize this year's Day of Prayer on May 6th, but if the judge's ruling stands, it could be the last one. Joining me now, Vanity Fair contributing editor Christopher Hitchens, author of God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything, and Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council and author of Personal Faith, Public Policy. Christopher, the Obama administration wants the National Day of Prayer upheld. The Justice Department is apparently looking into options for appeal. Tony Perkins' group is calling for the judge's impeachment. Why should this be unconstitutional? It's totally optional. No one is forced to pray.
No, but that's why the government shouldn't have a word to say about it. That's why it can't be a national day of prayer that has any government sponsorship. It's as plain as anything could be. The First Amendment is written with admirable clarity. Congress shall make no law respecting any establishment of religion. I look out of my window in Washington, I can see, I don't know how many churches. Everyone can go to them all the time. If you're a Muslim, you're supposed to pray 5 times a day. Just don't bother me with it, and don't ask for the government to endorse.
Now, I'm going to pause right there because here's one area where Christopher Hitchens is giving a slight to Muslims, but it doesn't matter. It could have been Christians to him. He doesn't care. What he said is, don't bother me with, fill in the blank. When you say don't bother me with something, what are you really saying? When do you use words like that? Don't bother me with a salesman at my door. Don't bother me with a used car commercial. It's silly. It's stupid. It has no merit. I can't be bothered with that. So what you're doing is you're placing yourself immediately with your language above this religious person, regardless of which religion he's picking on. He doesn't care. Trust me. He'll pick on all religions, and he has. Let's keep it going, though. So that was a little dig right in at Muslims right off the bat.
Tony, the federal judge in Wisconsin says, and I quote, "I understand that many may disagree with that conclusion, and some may even view it as a criticism of prayer or those who pray. That is unfortunate. A determination that the government may not endorse a religious message is not a determination that the message itself is harmful, unimportant, or undeserving of dissemination." Why are you calling for impeachment?
Well, first off, I mean, there's two problems here. One, I think this is a case of judicial activism, but also a case of judicial arrogance and ignorance. I mean, first off, this is a district court. District courts are not to set judicial precedent. They're to yield to appellate court precedent or to the Supreme Court precedent. And clearly, this has been a practice since the very first president of the United States, dating back to George Washington. So clearly there's a pattern here, there's a history. And she cites the Lemon test, which is a test that was first adopted in the 1970s regarding school and coercion. There's no coercion here. People have an opportunity to participate in the National Day of Prayer.
But is it really the government's role to be declaring this? I mean,
well,
people can pray, as Christopher said, all the time.
From the very beginning. Look, well, I think there's actually a secular purpose here, and that's why I think it goes all the way back to the founders, even some that Chris has written about,
have to
such
turn
as
this auto
Madison,
amp
who
off.
later, some writings later describe him as not being supportive of these calls for prayer. But I think there is a secular purpose because it unites the nation, especially in times of trouble, times of economic downturn, times of war. This has been a practice for presidents since the very beginning of the country.
Would it unite the nation if it was a day of Hindu
We'll see if
prayer
this works.
that was called for, or Muslim prayer, or Jewish prayer?
Well, but see, Christopher,
I mean, I'll tell you what, by the way,
no, we have 80%
by all means call me Christopher, if only because it is my name. I thought you were a foe of big government. It's a perfectly plain principle. This is not just a government intruding where it doesn't belong, but it also is establishing, I think, you know what day of prayer this is. This is a day of prayer for Christians. The intent is to import, the idea is to import surreptitiously, smuggle through customs the idea that this is a Christian nation, which is part of your own agenda, is it not?
Christopher, this goes all the way back, as I mentioned, to George Washington. In fact, the day after both chambers of Congress adopted the First Amendment before sending it to the people, they called for a day of prayer. They called upon George Washington to declare a day of prayer and thanksgiving. I mean,
that's Jorge Washington to you Hispanics.
An orientation toward the Christian faith. That's why today we still have about 80% of the American people identify themselves as Christian.
That's nothing. Even if that was true, it would be a tyranny of the majority in this case. As you know, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison.
I don't get
Thomas Jefferson and James Madison.
One judge.
Well, we're talking about the principle. I don't care which judge it is. Whatever judge said this wasn't constitutional would be correct. That's not. I don't care which part of Wisconsin.
I don't see how one district judge.
Well, then you're changing the subject.
Has somehow greater wisdom than every president who has led this country in its over 230 years.
James Madison was opposed. James Madison, who is the author of the James Madison, who with Thomas Jefferson was the author of the original Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom that became the First Amendment, was against even having chaplains in Congress or the armed forces, and he refused to call for days.
That was No. Christopher, you know that was discovered in writings 100 years after he died, which was totally inconsistent with the position.
What difference does that make?
What difference does that make?
Totally inconsistent. Totally inconsistent. If you'll let me finish, I'll answer your question.
Let me try to jump in here.
People like him then.
Inconsistent.
Tony, to Christopher's point about the federal.
Can I finish?
Let me ask you about Christopher's point earlier about the federal government involvement in this. I mean, because a lot of people who don't want the federal government involved in many aspects of their lives seem to be arguing in favor of this notion of the federal government having this National Day of Prayer. Well, is there I mean, Is there a certain hypocrisy there, or a double standard?
What's next? No. I mean, there's no one is being compelled to pray. No one is the government is not demanding. What happened yesterday was the government compelling you to pay taxes, calling the nation to set.
You know what? I have to say something here, even as an agnostic, and that is that I don't see the point in a national day of prayer. I don't get that. That's something the government, if for no other reason than our Constitution insists upon it, the government needs to stay out of that business. Okay? Whatever your faith is, I expect you to practice that faith faithfully. Why wouldn't you? But once you bring the government in saying, this is what we're going to do, we're going to have prayer here, here, and here, and here. Oh, you can pray to whichever God you want, but we are going to pray. I don't want you telling me that, government. Don't like it. I don't like that at all.
A day of prayer voluntarily is not compelling anyone to do anything.
Actually, you should know,
that's
sir,
what this is about.
You should know that it's Congress that has the power of the purse, not government. I'm sorry to have to keep telling you
well,
things.
Well, Congress is the one who is.
You ought already to know it's Congress that has the power of the purse.
Beginning in 19.
Can you tell me when this day? Can you tell me where this National Day of Prayer originated? What date? Can you, in fact?
That's a weird question.
As it is
I
now,
think it was
in 1988 is when Congress set a date.
Yes.
But it goes back in terms of having national days of prayer to George Washington, and every president since, almost every president since has declared national days of prayer. And as I said, James Madison himself did that. So,
Christopher, why do you think the Obama administration is
James
behind
Madison was very, well, the Obama administration is afraid of being accused by people like your guest of being socialist and secular. It's the same reason why James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine and many others were forced, and Benjamin Franklin.
The vast majority of the American people have always been.
I'm very sorry to say, sir, that people of the stature even of Benjamin Franklin, as well as Mr. Paine, Mr. Madison, Mr. Jefferson, had to be very careful to keep their opinions to themselves, because your equivalents in those days threatened them with persecution if they were honest about the fact that they were not Christian.
Tony, I want to give you the final thought because we're
being voted out of office.
You can be proud of this great tradition of intolerance.
Look, this is a case of judicial arrogance and ignorance. This is a state level, a district level court judge who thinks they know better than the 230 plus years of history in this country and is setting precedent. And Congress should look into whether or not this judge should be impeached.
Tony Perkins, Christopher Hitchens.
There you are, perfect intolerance.
I appreciate both of you being on. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that most religions, now I'm not saying, I'm pretty sure that there are a couple of main religions that do not necessarily promote tolerance. That's not one of their key virtues. A lot of other good qualities that we would consider good, I think by most standards, are taught. But tolerance requires that you agree with people that have differing views than you. And when it comes to religion, especially in my opinion, Islam, you cannot disagree with anything. Let me give you an example of something that happened recently with me talking about Islam. Now, as you know, on this show, this very show, many episodes, I've defended Islam because I defend all of the religions that are protected by my Constitution. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. But there was a boxing match. Now, I know this is going to sound weird, but just follow me here. So the boxing match is between two guys, a Mexican and an Englishman that was a Muslim. And he was, he was from the Middle East, but he by way of the UK. Prince Nassim Hamed, do you remember him? Yeah, I think of him as a clown. I don't like clowns in my sports. I like people to be, you can celebrate when you win. That's cool. But you got to be, clowning coming in, clowning during the fight. No good for me. So I don't like him. I don't like clowns in the ring. And he's a clown, big time clown. And they put him in with Marco Antonio Barrera, a Mexican fighter who came from the traditional school of boxing. And, Mexican fighters are so good. They're just so reliably powerful in their boxing, their defense, their offense. That may be no real super-duper superstars like you might get with a Pac-Man, at least when he's fighting and not fucking around. But Marco Antonio Barrera took on this Prince Nas, they call him. I guess he was a prince from some bullshit. So they call him Nas. So Barrera versus Nas. Nas comes in. He's got the big knockout punch, right? And he's clowning. Barrera schools his ass for 12 rounds. takes away the man's perfect record because it's the first real fighter that Nass has fought.